Welcome back to another episode of the Mind State Podcast. Today, my guest is Eric Farewell. He is an entrepreneur, author, pilot. I knew I was missing one thing, but most importantly, which we'll dig into a lot today, father and husband. With that, I just want to turn it over to you, Eric. You're really good at giving your own intro, so rather than me do it.
Oh, geez. No pressure at all. I love when we have no preparation for a podcast like this, and it's just like, yeah, show up and we'll do something at the house. It'll be great.
And then I drop that on you. You got this.
What introduction would be best for your listeners? I can give the basic overview. So, grew up in a cult, got married really young, made a whole bunch of money, realized how unhappy I was, consistently used entrepreneurism as a trauma response to not have to face my own pain.
Okay.
Had lots of people in my life die, lots of grief, lots of things to avoid. And instead of burying myself in booze, porn, drugs, or otherwise, I decided that work was the healthier alternative. Mm-hmm. Newsflash. It's not. So I've spent the past 7 years rebuilding, both physically from breaking my back twice as a test pilot, emotionally, almost losing my marriage of now 16 years in September, financially, dealing with business partnerships that have fallen apart and fraud and lots of stealing and things that have happened in my life. And at the heart of all of it, have come back to a realization that all of these things have happened to me, yes, and I can sit in that and be the victim, or I can learn the tools to be present with all that is and recognize that not only these things happening for me, to learn from, to grow from, to recognize and honor, but they're also happening by me. And depending on your religious beliefs, like my experience has been such that I believe that these are the things that were laid out exactly for me to follow, to learn, to be present with. And quite frankly, as much as I hate it, the only path to growth is grief. And I've had a lot of grief in my life.
And hence a lot of growth.
Oh, I'm one grown son gun.
I think I've thought a lot about, how to structure this. I reached out to you. You gave me some good ideas. The idea running through my head now is to start out talking about business and what has happened there. Just kind of build your story a bit. And then I want to talk about books. You're already an author. You're working on a new book. I want to know about what you're writing about. And then I just also want to know about writing and get your ideas there. And then, of course, fatherhood and being a husband, kind of FRD pillars.
Okay.
And then I got some bonus stuff we'll go over. So let's dig more into your business. I'll say a few things that I've heard, because I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts the last few weeks.
I'm so sorry.
At 7 years old, you got your first job in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. By 13, you started a business. 16 or 17, you were a test pilot.
Yep.
You crashed a plane. You know what? You're much better at telling the story again. So once again, why don't you, same thing, but let's go into a little bit more depth and hone in on the business aspect of your life.
Can do. So to hone in on the business aspect is to understand what happened before. Yeah. So I grew up in a really unique family.
Yeah, you said cult, I believe.
Cult's the easiest way to describe it. I think my parents would very much disagree, and if they ever listen to this podcast or any of the others I've been on, I'm sure that they will disagree with many things I've said, but that is my prerogative as I am the human that's experienced the things. So grew up homeschooled, Christian, extraordinarily conservative family. My parents started selling books to homeschoolers when I was 3 years old. Their response to almost everything was, and mind you, they did the best they could, but they were very much in a place of, all of us are born evil. We have to have the evil beaten out of us so that we can ask for forgiveness so that we can then finally be worthy of God's love. Okay. Much longer explanation as to why I no longer believe that, at least not in so many words. And again, this is not to polarize anyone else's beliefs. I don't believe it's my job to tell you what you should believe. But by the age of 7, I'd been flying for the first time when I was 3. And I remember so detailed every moment of that flight. The first time I'd been in the air, first time I'd seen the world from that perspective, the first time I'd smelled what an airplane smelled like on the inside. And all of those moments just built to this place where I felt free. I felt like no one could hurt me. I'm 3 years old. The fact that that was my response, my therapist tells me, is very alarming. But that was. And so by the age of 7, I discovered these things called ultralights. You didn't have to wait to be 16 to solo. So I went all in. My grandparents had started a restaurant in 1931, or my great-grandmother actually. And I was born on the grounds of that restaurant. So by the age of 7, I was working full time. I worked mise en place, dishwasher, cook, server. I mean, you name a job position, I had it in the restaurant, and they also had a hotel attached. So I worked as a bellhop. I worked the front desk. I gave tours of the property because we're on the National Historic Registry. So like all these different things that were doing things, and what really became very clear for me by the age of about 7.5, 8 years old was people respected me when I worked hard. People showed me the love that I didn't get at home. The moment I was outside the home, I got all this affirmation, all this expectation, great tips. You want to see an 8-year-old skinny little kid giving tours to old ladies? They compliment your eyelashes and they give you tips. And I got so much cash. So I started saving money like crazy with the whole goal being, I want to buy an airplane. I want to feel free. And at the age of 13, I finally saved enough money to buy the kit for an airplane. And about 2 weeks later, I realized that a homeschooled ADHD kid is not ready to build an airplane. In 2 weeks, I'd managed to glue 5 sticks together. I'm not even kidding. It was a wooden airplane. Literally glued 5 sticks together for the vertical stabilizer. And then I used sandpaper to round it in 2 weeks, working full time. So I put it up for sale on this new thing called the internet. It was $19.99. The internet was very new. eBay felt brand new. I think eBay maybe launched a year before. And it sold rather quickly. And the guy I bought it from turned to me and said, Eric, this guy's name is Jim McKinney. He was 78 years old then. That was my average friend at 13, by the way. It was 75, 78-year-old dudes who loved airplanes. And he said, hey, I have all these other airplanes. If you help me sell them, I'll give you 10%. And always this savvy entrepreneur, not really. I said, make it 20. And over the next 5 years, I sold 280 some odd airplanes. Dang. And so that launched my career. Around the same time, I went to my first internet marketing conference, discovered ebooks, discovered training courses, discovered all these different tracks. At that time, Frank Kern was there speaking, and at that point, he was still a Georgia hillbilly, not a Southern California surfer, and befriended all these different speakers. And I wanted to learn. I wanted to, selling an airplane and making 10%, 20% was great, but these guys were selling PDFs for $25,000, $50,000 a day, and I wanted that. So I learned from them. I built internet marketing businesses, started speaking when I was 15, 16, and just kept going and pushing and growing. And again, always on this path of, if the outside world sees me as good enough, maybe someone will finally love me the way I want to be loved.
I was just going to ask you, do you feel even at that point, the drive to work hard and the entrepreneurship was also escaping that discomfort, or?
100%. I couldn't recognize it then.
Yeah.
Then I was just doing the best I could.
Sure.
Then I was still laying it all at the feet of Jesus and blaming, myself for every challenge. And it's, again, this is not a conversation about religion, but it is interesting to see what programming we're brought up with and how different the outcomes become based upon the programming. And it's something that fascinates the heck out of me. It's like, all right, how do I create different programming? Because your last podcast guest was all about sex. And like, my wife and I grew up in the same cult. And the idea of talking about sex is so incredibly, incredibly shameful. Yeah. The idea of talking about pleasure in sex, particularly for women, well, that's against the patriarchy. We can't have that. There's so many elements that were ingrained in our programming that it's not to say we should break free of all of our programming, but we should explore. It's our prerogative, it's our challenge in life to actually say, okay, what is of me? And what is my programmed response that my nervous system created in order to make sure it feels safe so that it can continue living? And at least the way I grew up, most of it was fear-based programmed responses to ensure that I wouldn't have too much shame so that I would be eventually lovable. And, well, when all else fails, I can always work more.
Okay, so you're 16 working hard.
Yeah.
And, well, actually, it's beyond that now. You're doing the internet marketing.
Yeah. So just before my 18th birthday, about 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I was test flying an airplane. Battery died. Airplanes are weird. You can push start them kind of like a car if you had a stick shift, except you spin the propeller.
Yeah.
Super unsafe, really dumb. I've done it tens of thousands of times. And this time, it didn't go to plan. The next thing I knew, I was underneath the airplane, hanging onto a strut, tire between my legs, propeller at my toes. It was a pusher props, the engine on the back of the airplane. And we're running about 40 miles an hour across the airport. And it does a big, huge U-turn and goes and crashes through a wood fence into a concrete block wall.
Wait, back up. So you were starting it by spinning the prop?
Correct.
And it didn't go well.
So generally speaking, you leave the airplane's throttle at idle. or just barely cracked, so it'll actually start. And you spin the propeller, and it coughs and comes to life. And on a push-up propeller, it's even more challenging. You're supposed to tie it down or put chocks in front of it, all these different elements you should do. But when you're 17 and you can't be hurt, at least up to that point, I'd never broken a bone, right? Hand propped it. There was an issue with the throttle linkage between the two carburetors, so it was cracked, but one was at full power. And next thing I knew, I'm being drugged 40 miles an hour into a concrete block wall. About 40 minutes later, I woke up. Airplane's still roaring above me. I'm pouring blood from my forehead because I caught my forehead like this into the concrete block. Somehow still held onto the airplane through a wooden fence, like with 4x4s. And you could actually see it was aluminum covers over the strut of the wing struts, and I bent them in the shape of fingerprints. You can see my handprint in these things.
Oh my God.
So 40 minutes later, I wake up. I have no idea how much time has passed. Stand up slowly, turn the airplane off, walked into the hangar and sat down. And my grandfather, who at that point had passed away, but he had a wheelchair there. It was always there. Why is there a wheelchair in the hangar? Who knows? But it came in handy because I sat down and the EMT showed up. The EMTs were very, very specific. Said, sir, you've had a head injury. And I said, well, yeah, but my back hurts. No, you've had a head injury. You don't know what hurts. You have a... And so me being the rebellious jackass that I was, I sent them away. And I pulled up my Nokia 5150 and I texted my dad, a little QWERTY text. And I'm like, hey, can you come pick me up? He drove me to the ER. We get there. I'm holding a beach towel over my head, drenched in blood. And an hour later, they finally let me in. They put me in the MRI. They go, you have a back injury. No joke.
I tried to tell you that.
So at that point, I broke C1, T5, T6, T11, and L5. And I did have a traumatic brain injury. I lost almost all my childhood memory. But my whole life plans changed. I was supposed to go to the Air Force Academy, supposed to fly jets. All this entrepreneurial stuff was ancillary to my actual dream, which was go fly in the Thunderbirds. Like I wanted to be an airshow pilot and I wanted to fly fighter jets. That my whole life. It's the ultimate freedom.
Yeah.
And now that is shattered. Air Force Academy will take 14 years of my life, but they'll never let me fly with the TBI. They'll never let me fly with all the different challenges I had physically. So I went on to spend the next 5 years doing safer things. I quit flying for a long time. I raced motorcycles and cars and surfed.
Much safer.
I broke 31 more bones over the next 5 years. And there's a part of me that really wonders how much of that willingness to risk my life was just to avoid feeling what I needed to heal.
Man, I think last night, my wife, we were talking, she's like, so tell me about Eric. Like, what are you guys going to talk about? I gave her the brief overview. And she said kind of something specifically like that. She's like, oh, he likes to do adrenaline-based things to feel. I was like, okay.
You know what's really interesting is I don't get adrenaline.
Yeah, so let's...
Yeah. Not like most people. And if a cop pulls up behind me and the blue lights come on, I get adrenaline. All right? But skydiving, the moment I step out of the airplane, I'm completely at peace. The whole flight up, I'm processing the things that could go wrong, and it has happened to me. We had the engine on the airplane blow up, and we barely made the airport one time. My biggest fear was always jumping out and hitting my head on the tail and getting knocked unconscious. But not adrenaline, just anxiety.
I'm sure you've asked a therapist or someone about that. What's the response? What do they say?
The response is I lived my entire childhood in an over-adrenalized state to such an extent that my adrenals are so fatigued, it's challenging for them to produce anything. And not just my childhood, but I built careers in industries that people die in. I built friendships in industries that between 1% and 2% of the population dies every year. Even higher when it comes to base jumping. And there are gives and takes to both these things, right? Like when you are friends with someone that you know will most likely die before you see them again, when you say goodbye, it's a real goodbye.
Yeah.
And when you say hello, it's a real hug. There's nothing forced. It's genuine. I've been in the Alps. I've been in Norway. My favorite one was Extremsport of Echo. Norway's nuts, by the way. Blanket statement. Norway, you're nuts.
In a note.
In a great way. Like they have a government-sanctioned, government-sponsored week of the year where they literally fly helicopters to take base jumpers and paragliders to the top of cliffs so they can go do death-defying crazy crap. And then, the government pays for it.
It's state-sponsored.
It's state-sponsored awesomeness.
Yeah.
And yet, one of my dear friends who I was there with we had a beautiful dinner and we spent, I think, 3 days together. And then 3 days later, I'd flown back to the States. He'd gone to France. He slipped on an exit, hit his head and died.
My God.
And when you start to think about what these relationships mean, it's like it became very challenging not to feel. I'm still a huge empath, big feeler. I have all the emotions, but it became a different level of expectation. Like if I get a phone call after 9 p.m., my wife knows someone's dead. I got a call at 8:40 last night. She looked at me like, oh my God. So there are, I don't know, I'm not really making a good point here, but I think that the heart of it is just, I don't feel bigger or better because of the adrenaline.
Yeah.
For a long time, I did adrenalize things to not have to feel the grief and the pain and the suffering and the shame. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I had to fly, I had to race, I had to, in order to feel safe being me.
In order to feel safe being you.
Because I didn't want to face all the hard stuff that I actually needed to process. I didn't want to face losing my brother when he was 22. I didn't want to face all the hard decisions I've had to make throughout my life. I didn't want to face my own shame from childhood forward. I didn't want to have to do those things. So if I could feel good somewhere else, I wouldn't have to feel those.
And when you're doing something like
skydiving, flying, paragliding, paramotoring, doing aerobatics in airplanes, whatever it might be, it is a meditative act that allows you to be fully present in the moment and you can't think about anything else. Mm-hmm. And for most people, it's incredibly unhealthy to have anything that creates an escape like that. I think that I would challenge it. Flying and things like that can be incredibly healthy. I've watched it change people's lives for the better many, many times. And for me, myself, it changed my life for the better. But like anything, it can become an addiction. And so I was flying 200 to 500 hours a year, every year, because I couldn't be with just me. I couldn't be in my own soul. I couldn't meditate, couldn't be present. Everything was looking for the next escape. And so fast forward to today, I mean, I've flown 6 hours in the last year, and that was just because I caught a ride with a friend to one of our air races, and it made more sense to fly with him than drive myself. Mm-hmm. I love to fly. I still have a paramotor in my garage, still own 2 airplanes. I don't have to fly to be me.
When did that change? Is this 7 years ago?
Yeah, so 7 years ago, my brother passed away in a car accident. He was drunk driving, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he left behind a 3-month-old son. And he moved in with us 4 years prior. He was 18, moved out of my parents' house, moved in with us, came to work for me. He was my first employee at Aviator. And so we had an 18-year-old and a 1-year-old. By the way, great spread. Do not recommend. 0 out of 10. It's so challenging. But he was my closest friend.
How much younger than you?
He was, I have to do math. Math is hard. 5 plus 2 plus 2, 9.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
So yeah, we had an up and down relationship like everything else. And I found this to be pretty true in my life. If we ever get at odds with each other and then you make up with me, don't, because you're probably going to die in a few days.
Oh, is that the pattern?
That's the pattern. The pattern is if you make up, things were tough, there was some tension, and then we make up and everything's great. Notice that. I see this from a lot of people who've lost people in their life. When there are people who make things right, oftentimes right before they go, which is really interesting how our souls kind of create this balance. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. So my brother. Yeah. So that was the beginning of waking up. It was my brother passing away. My marriage is falling apart. We've, at this point, just starting to try therapy, but I'm talking to divorce lawyers, trying to figure out what do we do. We have this really successful business. We have 3 kids. I want to stay married to her, but I'd also really like to have a happy marriage. And it wasn't. It was really hard. And a lot of that was work that my wife was not aware that she needed to do for her own trauma. Me believing that she was the problem, so I didn't go do the work. By the way, if you are ever in this position where you feel like your partner's the problem in your relationship, go to therapy. Because, I mean, seriously, that's one of my only regrets in life is that I could have gone first. I could have led by example. I could have taken away the mysticism, taken away the shame of going and getting help, and I didn't. And so now looking back, I'm constantly, guys, first off, not all therapists are created the same. You're not marrying them, you're dating them. Go try a bunch of different ones to see who fits your style and do the work. By 2019, so 6 years ago, we were in therapy 2 to 3 days a week, 2 hours a session. We went to a marriage retreat in Nashville, Tennessee, where I learned about meditation. And it broke me. It was sitting like this, eye to eye with another man across knee to knee, breathing. There's 30 of us in the room. And the leader, after about 2 minutes of us breathing, goes, "Gentlemen, what you're practicing is self-control." And I felt blind rage, which is probably not the emotion he was looking for. But I felt blind rage. I felt so angry because my entire life, from the time I was 3 years old, people told me, "Eric, you need more self-control. You'll either end up as the president or in prison. If you only find self-control, you can have a great life." And I found out now anyone can be president. So, I mean, I'm just saying, there's still I have no interest. Don't vote for me. But all of a sudden, this guy tells me this is self-control. And it was like a switch flipped on for me. It's like, oh my God, I can do this. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know it was called meditation at the time.
Yeah.
It was just a practice we're doing, and I couldn't stop doing it because I'm looking left eye to left eye with another man. I can't let him down. Mind you, we're squatting, like holding a tree over, like a pretend tree over our head, squatting, breathing eye to eye. It feels like 3 hours. It's probably 8 minutes, but it felt like forever. And something cracked open that weekend, both for myself and my bride, of just like, oh, if we can get present, everything else falls away. Presence is the key. Everything else supports presence. It means you don't have to run. Yeah. You don't have to hide. You don't have to do things that are dangerous. You can just be.
If you're open to it, what were the specific challenges that you and Nell were going through up until that point?
Oh, man. It's always a delicate balance because I have no secrets. I haven't had secrets since 2020.
But she might.
Well, it's not about her having secrets. It's about not everything's mine to share.
Of course. And so, navigate that with the skill
absolutely.
that you have.
So the basis was early in our marriage, it became very clear that something was different about my wife. Through therapy, we found out basically when someone's been sexually abused by a family member, even if it's not direct family, the moment you marry them, you become family and their subconscious doesn't trust you. So I was sharing with our therapist early on. I'm like, hey, this is going on. And I touch her and she jumps like I'm hurting her and I don't know what's happening. And she liked that a second ago. And she goes, when did this start? I was like, I don't know. Like when August was born, like 10 years ago. And she said, I'd be surprised if it didn't start earlier. Maybe on your honeymoon. And I was like, I mean, I guess maybe. So the baseline was she'd been abused as a kid and her brain, her nervous system had kept her safe by helping her not remember.
Yeah, of course.
But once it comes to light, now we have all this new work to do. Yeah. So much EMDR and therapy and all these different things that you can do for past traumas and uncovering the memories, which can be both incredibly painful and really healing. And I had my own experiences that were a very similar vein, both physical abuse and sexual abuse. And it was like, all right, how do we help each other heal? So now instead of it being us at odds, trying to constantly keep score, constantly point out the other person's flaw, constantly getting triggered by something someone said, now it's, oh, hey, that's a trigger. My nervous system is flooded right now. There's something wrong. Let's explore this with curiosity instead of judgment.
Yeah.
So we went through this incredible period of going from everything being the end of the world to learning how do we create boundaries that secure our relationship. Like for a long time, we wouldn't have a real conversation after 8 p.m. because nothing good ever happened after 8 p.m. We had young kids. We were exhausted. I was working 100 hours a week. Mm-hmm. If we're having a conversation at 9:45, chances are one of us is going to get heated and triggered. So let's just, hey, my dad always said, don't go to sleep angry. Go to sleep angry. Wake up happier. Have the conversation when you're not in it.
Yeah.
And so we learned all these different tools. And I could give you dozens. There's one that you take a notebook like this, and I'd ask her, I'd be a witness to her experience. I say, I can see you're really triggered. What does it feel like? And she'd sit and she'd get in her breath and feel into her body and be like, it feels like I'm afraid. Ooh, what does being afraid feel like? And she'd sit and she'd really feel what being afraid felt like and honor it. Being afraid feels like I'm worthless. And you go 7 layers deep until you get to the basis of what she's actually feeling. And what's really unique with Nell is that you have fight, flight, or freeze. She's a freezer. So oftentimes she has no words. So as time progressed over the last 6-7 years, we built these tools to the point where if she freezes, I'm now safe enough in her nervous system for me to interpret for her.
Wow.
So I can look at her and go, ooh, you're really triggered. that feels like you're really lonely. What does lonely feel like? And then with no words, she can then drop in, feel what lonely feels like, and I'll see what the next word is. And she does this for me too. So like, I'm a fighter, by the way, she's the freezer. But if I ever freeze, we now have the tools to be able to be present in whatever the other person's experience is without causing shame, without causing judgment, without being in a place of saying the other person is in the wrong, just being a witness. So where we are today is unbelievable. It's so good. If someone could have told me ever in my life that marriage could be this good, I wouldn't have believed them because I didn't have the example. My parents had what I thought was a really good marriage, but I did lose 80% of my memory. So,
So just a moment ago, you said, if anybody could have ever told me that marriage could be this good, I wouldn't have believed them. So imagine there's somebody out there now listening to what you just said, and you're kind of telling them marriage can be this good, and they don't believe you. Where would you start to either convince them it can, or maybe even, let's say they are married. What's step 0 to get to that point?
So Tucker Max, another front row dad, probably one of the most brilliantly obnoxious, epic humans I know. He says something that I think is really crucial. I hate giving him credit for it, but I do it every time. He says there's no such thing as relationship problems. There are you problems, there are her problems. There's nothing either one of you can do for each other's. Mm-hmm. And I so respect that because I believe it's true. Most of us take the time to project our problems on our partner, claim that they need to change, they need to grow, they need to shift, they need to develop. If you're newly married, you've been married for 20 years, and you feel like there must be something more, there must be something deeper, the path that's worked for me, I don't like to offer advice. I'm a coach that doesn't give advice. That's always a fun place to be.
That's the best type of, that's a real coach.
I hope so. I think so. I give experiences. My experience has been finding other men who are safe to be fully present with, to drop into all of my emotions, to learn the tools to be able to bring back to my partnership with my wife. So we met each other through Front Row Dads, phenomenal organizations, one of many I've been a part of. And for me, it's all about doing the work with new tools that I can refine with other men and bring back to my marriage. Because I can't, especially if you're in a terrible place in your marriage, you're never going to be able to find a new tool, bring it back to your marriage, and make everything better.
Yeah.
No, because your nervous systems are already at odds. We marry the partner that we marry is always the person most designed to be able to trigger the absolute living shit out of us, right? They're there to challenge us, to refine us, to help us become better. And then we have kids. And if you think of your partner like sandpaper that's like trying to wear off your harsh edges, your kids are like these really small little pieces like attached to a little pointer that get in the crevices that your partner can't. Uh-huh. So anywhere that doesn't trigger you with your partner anymore, your kid probably will.
Yeah.
And I know your kids, so you can't lie.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Both of my kids have unique ability to get in those trigger points.
And we can look at it as a negative, or we can look at it as a gift.
Yeah.
To me, it's a gift.
Totally.
When I see those things, anytime that your nervous system is activated, generally speaking, and by generally speaking, I mean always, it is not what the other person has done to you. It's something about yourself that you're seeing in the mirror they're holding up through their actions.
Yeah.
They're holding up a picture of you and the way that you see yourself and the challenges you have for you.
That's really the crux of it, is just owning really everything. Everything good, everything bad. Yeah. It's all my responsibility. It's all my choice. It's all my, I don't like the word fault, but it's just another negative way to say
it's your
responsibility.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. And we either build up the reps to have the strength to be able to face the challenges, the emotional strength, the mental strength, the spiritual strength, or we deflect and play victim. So it's our responsibility, our opportunity, our fault.
Yeah. Let's put a bow on business, but I do have a few more questions. One thing that people look to you for and appreciate about you is that you managed to scale yourself out of your business. So I'd love to hear you say a few things on that. How does one stop working in their business, work on the business, and then ultimately let it be a business?
How many hours do we have?
Right.
It's a great question. The basis for me always starts at the beginning. The beginning is, what's the business mission? And to define the business's mission, the best way is actually to define our own mission, and then only work in businesses that align with our own mission. This took me a long time to learn. I was able to build missions for my businesses pretty easily. Building my own personal mission, extraordinarily hard. And after a couple of years of having it written down and knowing what it was, I had to add 2 words to it. And the 2 words were "and myself." And that was so unbelievably difficult to do. The amount of imposter syndrome I felt, the amount of pressure I felt, the belief that I didn't deserve what my mission was, when in fact the mission should have been about me first, so that then I can help others. My mission is, my purpose on this planet is to help myself and others overcome our fears, sit with our demons, and become present with who we truly are. That's my mission. My Aviator's Mission, which is a paramotor business that we started 14 years ago, 14 years ago, November. It's a paramotor is a thing you put on your back and you run into the sky with a paraglider above your head. It's like the ultimate jetpack. If you have ever had a dream of flying, it's this kind of flying. Airplanes are awesome. Skydiving is great. This is better. I mean, it really is the best. And we have the world's largest school. We teach people in Central Florida, and I love it because you're not teaching the adult version of them. You're teaching someone something superhuman. So you immediately are training their inner child. All their fears, all their concerns, everything. It's all inner child work. So when I knew that I wanted to step away from the business, I started writing, what is our mission? And at Aviator, our mission is to help ourselves and others overcome our fears through flight so that we can become who we're truly meant to be. Astronauts call it the overlook effect. When you step above yourself and begin to see the world in a different way, that perspective changes everything. And for a lot of people, that may be the closest they come to doing true internal work because they don't have the tools, they don't have the lifestyle, they don't have the community, they don't have people in their life that are going, hey, try ayahuasca this weekend, which that's not for everyone. Neither is flying, but it's another great tool forward. So if you're trying to get free of your business without selling it, but building a business that actually runs as a business, if you start with mission, you follow with values. From values, you hire and fire people who believe in the mission. And eventually, what becomes really interesting, and what's been my experience, like right now we're 100% staffed by alumni, people who learn to fly with us.
Wow.
Right now our sport is less than 1%, it's like 0.2% female, and we're 50% female staffed.
Wow.
And we're 100% female led. Both divisions of that business are female led, which is just super empowering for me because I want my daughter to know that she could do this too. Right? I don't want this to be a masculine thing that it's magic. Everyone should have access to magic. And then over time, each of these people, like at one point we had a COO, Chris, wonderful guy, came to work for us from SpaceX, making 7 figures a year, came to work for me for $45K a year. My last CEO left his previous job at mid 6 figures, almost high 6 figures with stock options, moved his family halfway across the country for $100,000 a year. Like they make the investment because they believe in the mission even more than the money. Mm-hmm. And that to me is the most crucial element, is that when we build businesses, it needs to be for the greater good to such an extent that money is a byproduct, not the purpose. Now, if we had a conversation before we started recording, I like right now, the money would be nice. Like we got Doge by Elon in February. We got tariffed in April. We got like all these things happen all at once. You're just like, oh my gosh, man, I wish we still had the money we had before COVID, but that's okay. It's a learning process, and it's learning to be with all of it instead of stressing and ending up spiraling and doing all the things that my nervous system wants to do because it's what it's used to. So to get free of the business, mission, values, hiring. And then the next piece is having the right coach that can help you step into a place where your ego death doesn't consume you. Because especially if your entrepreneurship is a trauma response to all the things you don't want to face, the reality is your identity is so tied to your title that the moment you step away from it, it can be incredibly challenging. And I'm really grateful that I had the right coaches and the right help to be able to step away. And now we have 5 companies and I work 90 minutes a week. And I don't even have to go to work. I have a co-coach who can manage the entire facilitation of our mastermind, but I love it. I love the members. So I still show up to most of them. When we were in Hawaii in April for a couple of weeks, I didn't show up, but that's just because I can't help myself now. I have to build businesses that I don't have to be involved in constantly. I don't ever want to be a slave to my business ever again.
Yeah. I feel like the answer to my next question might be very similar, but we'll see. This is more thinking about somebody who wants to maybe even move from W-2 work to starting a business. So it's not like the business is running, the revenue's great, and they want out of it. They're like, how do I get into it? What would you say to somebody trying to do that?
It's a tough question to answer because every person's so different.
Yeah.
The basic question I usually ask, I actually had a conversation on the drive over here. If someone put $50 million in your bank account right now, what would you do with the rest of your life? Mm-hmm. Because if you're doing something for financial gain, you have a 100% chance of burnout.
Yeah.
100%. Even if it's something you're deeply passionate about and would do for free, you still have an almost 100% chance of burnout. It's inevitable that the thing that you are doing will eventually wear you out, especially if you're not passionate about it, especially if you don't have deep belief that what you're doing makes a difference. So figuring out what you want to do that would make a huge difference in the world and make you feel as if you're leaving a legacy that matters. Like, what do you want written on your tombstone? How do you want to be remembered? It's not about leaving behind land and homes and all these. No, our legacy is how we're remembered. Our legacy is what impact we make in the world around us so that our children continue to go on and do more and greater and better than us. That's our truest legacy. But what happens in the dash between born on and dead on? You better be passionate. Mm-hmm. And you can be passionate about dumb things. I built an 8-figure business on butt fans. All right. You put a fan in your butt and you fly around the sky. I don't know how we did that. I mean, I do. Really hard work and a lot of passion. But our passion gave us the ability to care more than anyone else, which enabled us to go from, at that point when I started that business, there were about 1,200 active pilots in the US. We've trained over 3,500 of them now.
Dang, man.
Right? We've trained U.S. Navy SEALs, Delta, we just trained the SAS, British Special Forces. We teach all these incredible humans, both civilian and military alike, and it's because we care the most. So we built a company that could scale, it could actually teach a full platoon, it could actually teach a whole group, it could actually inspire a whole new world of both the military and civilian side. We've had air show teams, we've done incredible things to promote what we do, and it all came from passion. If I had run this business like any other business, where passion wasn't the core, one, I'd have a lot more money in a bank account because I reinvested almost every penny for 14 years. But we never had the capability that we have today. Before we got hit with the Doge effect, we were doing government contracts that were really pretty exceptional and really exciting and that no one else can compete for because we had the scale.
Mm-hmm. So then, in the situation, maybe somebody already has this business running and it's a good business, they're making a good living doing it, but the passion's not there. Mm-hmm. You're their coach. What are the questions you ask to help them kind of like get to the next point of action to move them in a direction that's going to get them where they want to be?
This happens more than you think. We had a client recently decide to burn the ships. He's had a couple companies for a long time. He's burnt out. He's overwhelmed. He doesn't feel like the work he's doing matters. The businesses feel stagnant. And there's the logical part of me, which encourages everyone, like, hey, it's important to know your numbers. It's important to know how much runway you have. It's important to maximize the value you can get out of selling this to your partners, your clients, or on the open market. Like, let's look at the logic, because logic is important. And then there's the emotional side of me, which says, run. How much time will you spend trying to sell your business? How much time will you spend trying to get your business ready to sell? How much of your life are you willing to give up? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're trading our life force, our time, that what little time we have on this planet, we're trading it with the expectation that something might change, that something might be worth a little bit more. Now, if your company's worth 50 grand now and you worked for a week and it's worth 50 million, okay, that's a pretty good exchange. But if you work for 6 months and it's worth 51, I had a conversation with a gentleman probably a year and a half ago, and it wasn't a formal coaching conversation. He just called me. He's like, what do I do? I've got a job that he loves, a business that he thought he was going to love, and a ton of debt tied around it, and a business partnership that was fracturing. So what do I do? I said, what if you just give the business to your partner? I say, well, but it's worth this, it's worth that. I'm like, is it?
Not with all that debt.
A few weeks later, he gave the business to his partner. It was like watching 100 pounds come off him. Why sit with all that debt, tens of millions of dollars, to sit there with the hopes that you're going to repair your business partnership, which, by the way, a whole other conversation on that. Like, I have business partners. They're wonderful. All human partnerships are designed around sex.
Well, we're going to have to dig into that.
If you're not having sex with your partner, you're going to have more fights. If you're not having sex with your wife, you're going to have more fights, right? Most of my business partners are men. I'm straight. I'm not having sex with them. We're going to have fights. It's going to become tenuous. It's going to become more challenging. So make sure that whoever you're in partnership with is someone you're willing to be in conflict with, that you don't have the opportunity for sex to repair. Hey, I told you we're going to talk about female orgasms as much on this podcast as the last one you did, but still, it is a deeply held belief I have. It's like most of us build these partnerships expecting them to work perfectly, and people get into 50-50 partnerships, which blow my mind. It's the craziest thing ever. And then 3 years down the road, they're like in a big fight, and their partnership's dissolving, and they don't understand why they are losing money, and their partner stole, and these different things. I'm like, well, of course. You weren't sleeping together. What do you think was going to keep the partnership together? Like, again, this is not to say you should sleep with your business partner. It's just it's a thought that popped in my head about 6 months ago. I go, all these people in these terrible business partnerships. Well, of course, if you're not intimate with your spouse, your partner, of course your partnership is harder.
Yeah.
Especially if it's over time. Especially if it's been 5 years since the last time you were intimate. Of course your business partnerships are going to be strained because they're the same level. It's not the same level of intimacy, but it's the same level of trust, of expectation. You know, much like the partner you marry is the person who's going to trigger you the most, the person you partner with in business will eventually trigger you too. I know for a fact that my business partner in National Stole, I'm certain, very triggered by me a lot of the time. And he does most of the work. He's an amazing partner. He runs that business, an aircraft racing series that I don't have to show up to the events even. It just happens.
A second ago, you said a 50-50 partnership is insane.
It is insane.
Okay, please elaborate.
All right. So there are different sides of every person. And I'm not a shark when it comes to business. But I am a shark when it comes to protecting my family. And I'm not a fighter, but I will beat you if you mess with my family. A 50-50 business partnership is inviting someone else to have as much control over your life and your family's life as you have. And that person you better trust with all your soul, and you better know that you're probably wrong. So 50-50 partnerships are really challenging, particularly because most of the time, one person brings more experience, one person brings more capital, whether it's energetic capital, time capital, whatever it may be. So generally speaking, I'm not in any 50-50 partnerships. I have never been in a 50-50 partnership. That may not be true. There's probably a couple back in the day when I was very young. But now I think it's so crucial to maintain either I want to be the minority partner that has 30%, 40% of the shares, and I really don't get a say at that point. You're running the show, you're in charge, or I want to be the majority partner where the minority partner's not bringing as much to the table or doesn't have as much experience or like whatever it may be. Right? Then if they make a decision I disagree with, I just outvote them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not because I think I'm better than anyone else. I'm more than happy to be the minority partner if I'm not doing the work and I'm not making the investment. But if I'm making the investment, I have the experience and I'm doing some of the work, at this point I expect to be the majority partner of almost everything. But I've been doing this a really long time.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's talk about being an author. You wrote Farewell to Normal.
I did.
And you're working on a new book now.
Yes.
So really, I'm just teeing you up, and I want to see where you choose to go with this. Like, what do you want to talk about? And then I'll have some questions for you.
I mean, I have to talk about the last 2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, my wife took the kids out of state for 6 days. First off, I've been married almost 16 years, and this is one of the first times that I have been home alone with the dogs and the guinea pigs, and she's been gone. Oh, man. I'm such a hermit. Dude, I didn't leave. I rode my one wheel to the Chinese food restaurant and I went to volleyball. That's the only places I went all week. I sat in my bed. I wrote 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, just locked in and hated it. Volleyball was my shining moment that week. It's like, oh my gosh, I get to see other humans that are actually really nice. I'm an introvert. I like to be home alone. And after a week of it, I was ready. I was ready to be done. The other element of writing that most people don't talk about is how, like, this book is a blend of a business book and a memoir. It's going to share a story that is my story. It's the story we're having a conversation about right now, hopefully a little bit more eloquently because I actually thought through every sentence, with the foundations and the frameworks that we use both in my coaching and my mastermind to help people amplify their own mission, their legacy, etc. And reliving the stories with as much thought, I have been more tired every day for the last 2.5 weeks. I mean, it's 4:00 in the afternoon as we're recording this. In about 2 hours, I'll be ready for bed.
Wow. Yeah.
And I won't fall asleep until 11, but I will be like ready. Like last night I was trying to write and I spilt some extra time in. So I was like, it's like 8:49. I'm trying to finish out this chapter. And I turned to my wife and I said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm sharing this story. I'm writing every detail. When my brother died and I got the call and he died a mile from our house, and I jump in my little race car and I'm roaring down the road and I squeal in and I jump out of the car and I talk to the police who were there, who are friends of mine, just come from a really small town. They're like, yeah, he's talking, he's good. And then I do 120 miles an hour the whole way to the hospital. And I get there and the surgeon tells me he's gone, and I have to call my parents. I have to call my siblings. I have to tell his baby mama. Like I had to relive these moments, and it's like, oh. And it's just, I have grieved this so much for so long. And I know the work. I mean, I have studied the psychology. I have studied the details. I've studied the background. I understand how plant medicine can help and all these different elements. And I've tried a lot of things and a ton of therapy and a ton of meditation and a ton of breath work. And the grief is still right there. And it's so crazy to me that it doesn't change. What the difference is now, I have access to be present without having it overwhelm. And I've learned the lesson. I was talking to Ryan Moran about this yesterday. Grief lives, like I can actually show an example. This won't work on the podcast, but it'll work great for anyone on video. I always carry a challenge coin everywhere I go.
I see it.
This one comes from another front row dad, Kim Wimberly. It's a fatherhood challenge coin. I have many of my own that we have for our groups, and every student who learns to fly with us gets a challenge coin. It's a military honor. And on this coin, there are two sides. And I won't bore you with what's on this coin because half of it's Latin and I can't explain it. Although I do have a full printout and it's a beautiful coin. But grief lives on one side of the coin. And the grief, my mother described it perfectly. She said when James died, she said, when it starts out, grief is like a button in a box. And when it starts, there's a ball in the box as well. And the ball is the size of the box. All you feel is grief. And as time progresses, the ball gets smaller. And when it runs over the grief button, the grief is back. It's the same level of grief.
Same
intensity. It doesn't change. It's same experience. Over time, the ball gets smaller and smaller. The other element I'm learning is that grief may be on one side, but the duality of life, the depth of what grief is, the depth of all of those emotions that are tied to grief, is that they're trained by bliss. They're trained by true joy. And only by knowing true grief can we know true joy. And we were at Front Row Dads Live last year doing a breathwork session, which I've done hundreds of hours of breathwork. I'm a breathwork practitioner. I love this stuff. It's magic. It's drugs without drugs.
Yeah.
Like for this homeschool Christian kid growing up, drugs without drugs is perfect. I grew up in Dare. I know how dangerous drugs are. But I'm laying there and I'm doing breathwork with 100 guys in the room and everyone's screaming and crying and there's all these big emotions, and all of a sudden I am cackling. One moment I'm with my dead brother having a conversation about why he lived and why he died so young. The next moment I am just laughing at the top of my lungs, the loudest I've ever laughed in my life. And then I drop back to grief. Then I drop back to laughter. And I realize that I have the emotional range to be in both sides, to be with the grief in the joy. That was a new one. That was like, this whole being human thing, there's still so much to learn. Like there's so much to learn. There's so much duality in all things. Like what else do I have? Like where there is anger, what's on the other side? Where there is fear, what's on the other side? How can I sit with full presence of the experience? We were in Kauai in April. We got a call from our team. Eric, the whole market's freaking out. President Trump just announced 46% tariffs for Vietnamese products. All of our paragliders come from Vietnam. There is no manufacturer in the U.S. for these products. It's a $50 billion ask to have it move. You have to move production from France, Germany, Vietnam to build these in the US. We've been trying to get congressional approval to buy products for the military from these countries that they don't allow because of the Berry Amendment, right? Now all of a sudden 46% tariffs, and we've got $250,000 in gliders that are ready for shipment. And all of our competitors charge the client. All of them said, oh, you ordered your glider in February? Well, now there's tariffs, now you owe us 46% extra. And I couldn't ethically do it. Mind you, I spent a lot of time like just thinking through philosophy and ethics and morality. And like, I want to be a good man. It's really important to me. I know we're going to talk more about parenting later, but like, it's really important to me. In the moment they're like, what do we do? I'm like, well, you run the company, not me. And then we had a leadership change the same day.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, oh, well, we've never used debt. We've got a $400,000 line of credit we have never touched. I guess we're paying some bills. Mm-hmm. And it felt so right. And it triggered the ever-loving shit out of me because every area would normally be massive fear, my nervous system knows where those fears should be. My nervous system knows, well, oh, there's not $500,000 in profit coming in this month. What do we do, right? We have to contract. We have to build fear. We have to retract into our body. We have to find a way to make sure that we stay safe. But instead, I took deep breaths and sat with my wife on the beach in Kauai and just was present with my kids playing in waves and the conversations that were difficult that I had to have leadership teams. And, you know, I knew that presence was key. And so rather than allowing myself to just be overwhelmed, I'm just here. Yeah. And I still am. And it's still crazy. It keeps getting crazier. Like the market right now, I mean, I haven't had a concern about money since mid-2016. Mm-hmm. Mid-2016, I made my first $1 million in a year in a e-commerce business, a real business, brick and mortar, not BS, PDFs and stuff that I didn't really believe in, but a real business. And then a couple months later, I made $1.2 million. Then a couple months later, I made $1.3 million. Then it was like 21 days later, I made $1.4 million. It was just like, oh my God. And so I just stopped having fear around it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge part of my success is like when you stop fearing something, you stop constraining around something. And the more that you can practice circulating instead of fearing, abundance works. Like the universe is an abundant place. There's so much. Because you're driving through this beautiful town we live in, you're driving past these $40 million homes, you're going, how is that possible? And not that I want that, I don't. But also, are they living any different life than I am? Are they a different person? Are they more capable than I am? No. They just think differently. They move differently in the universe. I was talking to Preston Smiles about this. I'm like, the house that I really wanted for a while is 2 doors down from our house. This guy was one of the first investors in Uber. It's one of his 3 houses within a half mile of each other. One's across the street. So he's got his $3 million house across the street from me and his $20 million house 2 doors down from me. And it's beautiful. I mean, this house is stunning. And $20 million house is like insane to me. Our last house was $225,000, right? But I love it. I talked to Preston. I said, Preston, mind you, Preston, by the way, I don't know if you know him well.
I think I was on a summit call that he was a part of at one point. I don't know him well.
Preston is one of my favorite humans.
Okay.
Try to get lunch with him every week.
Nice.
He is an abundance coach.
Okay.
That's not full of shit.
Wow.
Which doesn't exist, by the way. He's the first one I've ever met. Yeah. Someone who lives what they preach. He has periods where it's outpouring and he's just giving back to the universe and investing in things. And there's times where he's like, no, my arms are open. I'm ready to receive. And he lives it. And I said, Preston, is the only thing keeping me from buying this $20 million house the fact that I don't trust the universe enough to just go buy it? Like, I don't know where I come up with a down payment for a $20 million house. That's a lot of money. 20% down would hurt. And maybe there's just a part of me that is still restricted and afraid. And that's the difference between me and a guy who has a $20 million house. So I've been playing with this thought for over a year now. I'm like, what would it look like to live without fear completely? Mm-hmm. You know, everyone has fears: public speaking, singing, dying. Usually not in that order, actually. It's singing above speaking and then speaking above dying. People are more afraid of public speaking and singing in public than they are of death, which is
I've always heard that, and I don't believe it.
I mean, I don't know if it's true, but I the people I've heard tell me that I kind of agree with because I get kind of scared sometimes.
But compared to death?
I think that most people don't actually understand death well enough to fear it. I think that most people
Well, yeah,
perceive it to be
true.
far too far ahead. They don't consider that it could happen at any moment. They aren't actually present with what is, so they never actually understand how close they are to death.
Totally.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this abundance, though, and the abandonment of fear.
I mean, the abandonment of fear is one of the deepest softwares that I was given as a kid is don't be foolish. Right? Because to act as a fool is to be foolish, is to thus be a fool, and to be a fool in the eyes of God, right? There's all these different spiritual and religious, not spiritual, but religious elements to this. So the programming I have throughout my whole life is do good, be kind, take care of other people, don't be foolish. And I think that has served me very well in making a lot of money and having, what we need. And I think that's a root fear now. Like, why must I fear being a fool? Can I not do foolish things that other people may view as foolish, but I would have a different perspective or different experience level? Maybe have a different risk tolerance?
Yeah, because don't be foolish. There's a judgment there.
100%. For me, my story is it goes back to I don't want my dad to call me and tell me I'm a fool. That's like a deep wounding. For him to tell me I'm not a good man is crushing.
Has he said that to you, or is that something he would say?
Oh, there have been plenty of those conversations. Yeah. We're maybe not directly. It's always interesting when I prove him wrong. But in 2018, I read a book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And one of my mentors recommended, and mind you, I've either had a mentor or a coach my whole life since I was 13. I think that everyone should have both. A mentor that is doing what you want to do someday, a coach that you pay more than you can afford to challenge you to actually be responsible and follow through to get to where your mentor is. So the mentor should be free. It should be someone that you look up to that gives you a North Star. Mm-hmm. And a coach should be someone who's with you on the day-to-day, encouraging you and looking for your patterns to help you not repeat them. But one of my mentors gave me this book, and he's like, you have to read this book to make you think. And the whole concept of the book is...
What was the title again?
The Great Game of Business. The whole concept of the book is simple. It says you open your books to your team. So every number, profit, loss, margin, everything gets put in front of the team. And they know what the mission is. They know what the business's goals are. And they summarily rise to the occasion. We did this in 2018, earlier this year, when all these financial stresses started coming. I said, hey, guys, here's the books. Here's the struggle in this business right now. How can we fix this? And they go, oh, well, we could drop our salaries by 35%. Voluntarily. Mind you, I was the first one. I cut 100% of my salary off. Mm-hmm. It's like, you guys are going to take a cut. I'm out. Don't pay me anything. Right? That's a leader's way, right? But it changed everything. So I get this book, I go through it, I love the concept. I'm like, this is scary and I want to do it. Tell my dad about it. My dad's like, don't you ever do that. It will destroy your business. And I just handed him the book. And about a week later, he calls me, he goes, all right, it actually sounds like a pretty cool idea. Let me know how it goes. There's been a bunch of those over the years that I do enjoy because I don't want to be foolish. And like everyone, the father wound is we want to be honored by our father in the way that he wanted us to honor him.
Yeah. Father wound I have work to do on that one still. I wanted to ask you more about mentors. Like if I look at my notes, I wrote the word mentors at least 4 times all over the place to make sure we dug into this. So I'll start by sharing that I've never really had a mentor. And I've become aware of that the last few years, maybe a little longer. I think what first made me aware of it is that my younger brother has always stumbled into these great mentorships. He has a business mentor. He's just always been in a position where people guide him, and it's helped him a lot. And I've always just been like, man, that's so cool. It's really been the last year that I'm like, okay, what is going on here? Like, why? I'm a good guy. Why don't I have one of these? And I went to this talk last year at one point. A big focus on it was talks. And afterwards, I went and talked to the guys like, hey, man, how do I get a mentor? Like, why haven't I had one, And he's like, can I ask you a question, Danny? I was like, of course. And he says, you strike me as a guy that kind of just like has it together, right? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think so. I try to. It's like, so then how could anybody ever help you? And what I took away is that, and I reflected on that a lot, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Every time I've met a potential mentor, my tendency has been to try to make them like me, to try to present myself as equal. And so I've probably finagled my way out of most mentorships just by tricking them, or not even really, like, not like I tricked them, but I didn't present myself as a mentee. So that's my story, but more broadly, I just want to hear your advice on how to obtain mentors, how to notice when somebody could be one, how to be the best mentee possible. Because you said you've had one since you were 13.
I've had many. What I'd love to dig into a little more is why you feel like you need them to like you and why you present yourself that way. This is not me putting on coach hat yet, I promise.
No, not at all. And
later.
if the hat comes on, I welcome it. Yeah, so why in general, right? Like, it is a need of mine. Like, I want to be seen. I do want people to like me.
But you use the words as equal.
Yeah, I think it's because I don't know, but it's like I'm ashamed if I encounter somebody who has maybe something a little more figured out than me, especially financially. I get really like, it triggers me, and I get like, ugh, and like it's really uncomfortable. And so I think that's part of it. Like, so it's not necessarily wanting to be equal, but
not be seen as less than.
Yeah.
Anytime that I feel that, that feeling, that icky, ooh, I don't want to be, they can't see me is not perfect. That's such a beautiful, beautiful red flag. No, seriously. Okay. Like the moment you feel that, if you're playing volleyball on Saturday with me and your daughter and Justin Donald shows up and he's a little more jacked than you and he's making a little more money than you and he's got all these different things working for him, there's a shadow too in everyone.
Sure.
There's a challenge in everyone. And if you see anybody, it doesn't have to be Justin Donald. Probably
sure.
isn't. I mean, Justin's kind of a loser. I'm just kidding. I love JD. I just have to give him crap. He's a way better volleyball player than me, and that upsets me. But they're like, it's like someone spray painting on your soul the areas that you need to look at, that there is healing to be done. One of my favorite questions that I use in coaching a lot, I actually got this from Seth Daly, another front row dad,
Love Seth.
This wouldn't be so bad if it didn't remind me of blank.
Oh, man.
So as you're meeting a mentor, and you're welcome to come up with a real story, or you can share, and we can do this offline too, but like when you have that person, you're like, man, I really wish I had what they have. I wish I had the life they have. I wish I had the relationship with my wife they have, or the kids they have. I'd love to have the 18-bedroom house in Colorado they have. That'd be great too. If there's something in you that gets triggered to trying to posture or try to be something that you're not, ask yourself the question, this wouldn't be so bad if it didn't remind me of blank. I ask this question a lot. And one of the most recent ones, one of my clients, he was really struggling in his relationship. His marriage is ending. And the conversation came full circle. And I said, well, this wouldn't be so bad if it didn't remind you of what? And he goes, being 10 years old on the bus. And they wouldn't stop picking on me. They wouldn't stop hurting me. It's not the adult who's going through the divorce. It's the 10-year-old little boy who's not being shown love.
Yeah.
And whatever it is for you, whatever the reality is, it's not that your brother's better than you or that he's more of a loser than you, so he can draw the right woman or the right mentor, because it's all the same. It's all attraction. My personal experience getting mentors has been, there's two different chapters in a man's life, I think. The first chapter is your youth, where the single best thing you have going for you, the reason why people want to mentor you, is because you're young enough to actually make a change in the world, and they aren't anymore. They're recognizing that the thing that they miss the most is their youth. The thing that they are most attracted to is making an impact with someone else who can make a bigger impact and increase their ripple, right? When I was a youth, which I'm still really fighting that I'm not a youth.
Same.
I'll be 40 in 5 months. Oh God. But no, 4 months. Shit. But I'm realizing that I'm no longer the mentee. I'm no longer the youth. And when I meet with young people, when I see people like your daughter who have so much to bring the world, that I want to help them just because they're young and they're on it, they're sharp, they have a desire to bring something good. Then the second chapter is us, middle age, growing up. We have families, we have things that we were responsible for. Might have holdings and properties. We may have businesses. We may have different things in our life. So what does a mentor look like now? Up until I made the shift from my priority being business to my priority being legacy and family and all that, I just found really, really wealthy, really smart people who were deeply attracted to what I did. My last team mentors both learned to fly with us. They're the ones who turned me on to EO and YPO. They're the ones who they just were blown away by my business model. I couldn't believe what a change we made in their life, and they just wanted to give back. Since then, my mentorships look different. I don't need one mentor that I meet with once a week. I have hundreds. It's guys like you on the volleyball field watching how you interact with your daughter. It's guys like Bronstead showing me how to coach my kids in a way that I never would have thought. It's all of these humans. So while I don't have a single mentor anymore, there's still people I call for support. And those are the people who are 5 years, 10 years past where I am right now.
Yeah.
That's the Prestons, the Garens. These are people who I meet with almost daily just to go, hey, here's where I am. Here's where I need support. What are your thoughts? And it's not just asking for help. A lot of times it's celebrating wins. Yesterday, my text with Garen are just like, dude, I finished 50% of my book today.
Nice.
Feels so good.
Yeah.
And he knows the pain he's written too. So it's those things. And to go back to your question specifically about how do you find a mentor? Is that what the question was?
Yeah. It's multi-part. Like, how do you find them? And then once identified, ensuring that, I'm somebody they want to mentor. And maybe that's phrased silly, but I'll let you go on.
So my first mentor, I had two at the same time, basically. One guy's name was Chris Verhey. He is a 6'8" Dutch guy living in Boise, Idaho, driving a Mini Cooper and an H1. Bizarre human. Very talented, very smart. I was 12 or 13. We met at a marketing conference. He was trading options, and I wanted to learn because the idea of making money with money was really intriguing to me. My family didn't have much growing up. We were very, very poor. And not having to trade my time for dollars was really attractive. Then, excuse me, I met another man named Alex Mondosian. I don't know if this number is real, but at John Ruhlin's funeral a few months ago, apparently he's done $30 billion in sales on the internet, which seems like a lot. But Alex was, at that point, probably around 40. I was 13. He's Armenian. He was sharp. He was well-spoken. He was thoughtful. He took really complex ideas, made them as simple as possible. He was the first guy to do Socrates-style sales. He had a book called The Ask Method. How do you just ask people what they want and give it to them? Right? And I was so drawn to this guy. I want to learn to write copy. I want to learn to do all these things. So I just walked around. He'd set his briefcase down. I'd pick it up. And I was 13 years old, awkward as hell homeschool kid walking around a San Francisco conference center following this guy around. And can I get you some coffee, Mr. Mondosian? Can I do anything to support you, Mr. Mondosian? Do you need some slides prepared for your next speech, Mr. Mondosian? Just, for lack of a better term, brown-nosing the hell out of him because that's what I had to offer.
Yeah.
I didn't have money, but I had time and I had respect. I had mad respect. And then the second piece of it is I had a desire to do big things. And mentors love people who want to do big things. So now when you're 40s, trying to figure out what do you do to find a mentor, what do you have to bring? The biggest thing that you're bringing that the mentor probably doesn't have is a great relationship with his kids. Great relationship with your wife. A deep passion for whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah.
A belief in the technical ability to get there. You have a lot of things to offer.
Yeah.
When I wanted to start working with Garen Jones, it was not a hey, Garen, you're $12,000 an hour. I'm going to pay you to coach me. No, it was like, hey, you're awesome at this, this, and this. We're very similar in these areas. I mean, he called me out on that. I didn't realize. But there were obvious things that he needed help with. That I happen to be good at building media companies. I happen to be good at building brands that don't need me. I happen to be good at developing, even coaching businesses that don't require me to show up to coach. So how can we help each other? It's not about, especially as we're moving into the mentor age of life, it's not necessarily about coming in subservient and getting someone else's coffee. Maybe it's giving them shit on a volleyball court and then going, hey, by the way, I see that you're doing this thing and it's something I'm really interested in. Is there some way that I can learn from you? And then I'm certain it'll come full circle so that we can make sure we support each other.
Yeah.
And again, if you have the money, pay people, especially a coach, really well, because that investment in yourself comes back tenfold over and over and over again. The number of times, like I didn't charge for my coaching the first 8 months I did it.
Wow.
I didn't need the money. And it felt like it was making relationships transactional. Mm-hmm. And the first person that I charged cut her work hours by like 40%, and it almost doubled her revenue in the first couple of weeks. She's just like, all right, this is magic. Because all she was doing was taking everything I told her to do and just doing it. And it wasn't like I was telling her what to do. I was just sharing my life experiences about how I'd done this in that area. And now it's become a common result. It's like, I think our average right now is around 70% more revenue and about 40% less work in the space of the first 3 months, because you get really refined on what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. And then you have this person you're paying a lot of money to asking you every day or every week or every month,
doing it?
Hey, how's it going? Oh, you just can't seem to get around to it. Something's a little overwhelming. This wouldn't be so bad if it didn't remind you of what? Because the reality is, anytime you have a block, I have a wonderful client right now. She's just a baller human being. And she's probably the most complimentary, kind person I've ever met in my life. Like, she'd meet you and she'd spend 45 minutes walking through your house, telling you what she likes about this and that, and how impressed she is by this. And, oh my gosh, did you see the way your daughter talked to you? That was so cool. And the moment she talks about herself, she's a loser. She's a failure. She's a this. She's a that. She can't do it. She's overwhelmed. She's burnt out. And it's literally like a different human walks in the room. And as her coach, it's my responsibility to show her. Mm-hmm. It's my responsibility to go, hey, I hear you. I see you. And what's coming out of your mouth isn't your truth. It's your fear. What's underneath that fear that's the real truth? Because that's the thing we have to heal. I don't know if I answered the question at all, but it was fun. We went on a monologue, baby.
Oh, I love it. Let's talk about fatherhood. And I think let's do that by digging into a little bit in your own childhood. And how does, like you said, for example, our kids help get in the nooks and crannies of our triggering. Mm-hmm. What have your kids helped you realize that you maybe forgot about, or?
Oh, man. What haven't I? About 3 months ago, I went to a group of men that I'm close with, and I was like, guys, I'm angry. I haven't been angry in like 6 months. Like, did not lose my shit at the kids, wanted to. We've had a hard year. It's been a really full year. January, my father-in-law hung himself. And then obviously the Doge stuff, the tariff stuff, all these other elements, all these extra pieces. And in May, my wife went back to Florida for a week, 2 weeks, for her sister to give birth and to be present with her mom, who just lost her husband of 40 plus years. And I'm home with the kids, and they're in school. And I cleaned the kitchen at like 11:30 at night, and at 7 a.m. the next morning, it was a wreck. And I got the kids to school, and I came home, and I texted my wife to go, hey, can you hold some space for me? She's like, sure. And I just lost it. She's just like, our kids are slobs. They're a wreck. I don't understand. We're both clean people. We're both organized. We're both thoughtful. Like, how can they do this? It's such a disaster. And I just had to let it out. I had to let it out, and I had to do it in a way that was healthy, because for most of my fatherhood, I've modeled what I learned, which what I learned growing up was the only emotion that's manly is anger. The result of not getting exactly what I wanted right away from my children deserves corporal punishment, period. I was beaten so frequently that I had a black and blue butt for months, years, potentially. I don't remember, but I remember basically every day my choice was, so we had a peach orchard behind the house, and peach switch is the perfect switch apparently. But I had to make the choice. Do I want to bleed or do I want to bruise? Because if you get too thin of one, it cuts you. If you get too thick of one, it bruises you. And so every day I had to go out and choose my punishment for whatever perceived wrong there was.
There was always something.
Always something. And when the switch broke, the spanking is over, time to go get into the switch. And so it was a really hard way to grow up. And again, my parents did the best they could, but their belief was that their children were born evil. And this is really where I struggled, because I grew up very religious and I had all the beliefs. And the more research I did, the more understanding I did of religion, the more you read the Quran, you start to read different scriptural texts and go, these are all so dadgum similar. Why are we hating each other over a slight difference in words? But as a father, it was really challenging, because when my eldest was born, I looked in his eyes and he wasn't evil. Mm-mm. And I didn't have the tools then to know how I wanted to parent differently. But over time, I've learned that I don't want to parent with corporal punishment. I want to parent with curiosity. And my kids are far from perfect. Recently, one of them was rolling rocks down a hill on his way home from school. Way home from school. I was trying not to give it away which one it might be. And the rock jumped and hit a Cadillac Escalade's windshield. And rather than running and hiding, because he knew of the punishment that was going to come, he called us crying.
Wow.
It was an accident.
Yeah.
Cars driving behind the grocery store, like there's never any cars back there, and he was having fun with a friend. $1,600 later, which he's working off diligently. It's such a different experience to have kids who feel safe enough to be fully present with their fears, their challenges. One of our kids came home from school and they were acting a fool. And we're like, why are you acting a fool? They go, well, I'm not my best self at home. I'm my best self at school, but at home, I don't feel like I have to be. And like, part of me is like, please, could you maybe try it? And the other part of me is like, no, it's really great that they feel safe enough to express themselves, to allow their overwhelm out here, to be engaged with us. And I'm far from the perfect dad. I'm still making mistakes. And right now, it's been a really hard couple of weeks, partly because they were out of town for me to write. And then when they came home, I'm still trying to write. And that creativity requires me to be like locked in a room. And it doesn't feel right, because I've been so present for so many years where there really hasn't been anything else that's keeping me from them. Like, I have 2.5 hours a day that are available for meetings. So really 1 meeting to 2 meetings a day. And then I just hang out with them or my wife. And like, we've tried to eat at every restaurant in Austin. Like we're trying to like do all the cool things. And so there's definitely different seasons. And right now this season's really interesting, but how did my childhood affect how I parent? I think that it's really been, I've had to do a lot of grieving of what I thought was a good childhood. My own work with blocked memories and all these things that your nervous system does to try to keep you safe and feel healthy. But yeah, I think that overall, I'm really grateful. At first, I'll be blunt. I really thought that like the whole beat the shit out of your kids thing was the right thing to do, because I turned out okay, right? My parents read a book when I was very young called To Train Up a Child. And someone else who read that book in Oregon chained their kids to their well house because they were being so disobedient, and the kids died.
Oh my God.
So I feel like I got off easy in some terrible way. And I think that, again, just because it's the best they can do doesn't mean it's the right thing. So I feel for my parents. I understand they're overwhelmed. They had 5 kids. They were entrepreneurs and trying to run a business that made tons of money in the summer, and they were broke by Christmas every year. I can't imagine the amount of stress they were under. And I know that their response was, guess what? To hustle and grind and make lots of money and work really hard, and then be prepared, and then not face the frustrations and challenges they have, but rather push them under the surface. My mother is the world's slowest packer. And this, if we'd be at a family event, all these families are around, my mom would be like, all right, head to the car, we're getting ready to leave. And we'd sit in the car for 2.5 hours. Because she'd like have to say goodbye to this person, say goodbye to that person, like comically bad, to the point where we traveled from March to October, September, October, every year in a motorhome with 5 kids, selling books to homeschoolers. Wow. And my dad would pull the bus around in January. so she could start to pack, right? Rather than having the hard conversation around, hey, it's really important to me that we leave on time and that we're not so stressed out. Can we work on ways to make this more efficient? Maybe you can utilize the kids to pack their own areas, or like trying to have a conversation. No, we don't have a conversation. We just plan 3 months in advance to have the bus blocking the entrance to the home so she could load and unload Charlie Daniels Band's old bus. Like, it's the most... And mind you, my parents are both still living. They take care of my sister, who was in a skydiving accident 4 years ago. And they do an amazing job, and it's really incredible. They picked up their lives, moved across the whole country from Florida to Utah, and on a moment's notice, she died a bunch of times, and she's a quadriplegic, and they take care of her full time. So, wow. And you can teach old dogs new tricks. We've been very open with our journey about like the ways we've healed ourselves in our marriage, the way that we've done the inner work and therapy and all this stuff. And I'm sitting at Cracker Barrel with my dad. My sister is on intubated with not a breathalyzer, whatever the word is, And so they were changing out a throat tube or something in a car, and we're sitting in the rocking chairs outside. And my dad goes, I was talking to my therapist about my anger. I'm like, wait, what? You just used 2 words I didn't think you knew. It was like that you have anger and that you have a therapist? He's 78, and he's doing the work. So it's more power to him.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I listened to a few podcasts, and one of them you briefly mentioned bullying as a kid for you.
Being bullied?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
So I mentioned the homeschool thing. I mentioned that we traveled half the year. The back end of traveling half the year through your entire childhood and having prepper parents who had no money, but my grandparents did. Growing up, we never even went to the grocery store the 6 months we were home. We'd go shopping at my grandparents' restaurant, get the food we need. And then aside from that, my mother would buy grains in 5-gallon buckets. So we made our own bread, 5 loaves a day, every day. Or at least most days. My memory is every day. We had so much lentil soup that I can't eat lentils. Literally can't eat them. Can't do it. Couscous, can't do it. Textures get to me still. But we were very much excluded. And mind you, in my early childhood, it was illegal to homeschool. So we had to hide from the truant officer. We had like all these different things that were very like an odd sense of responsibility for a 6-year-old to be like, hide. We have to get away. We can't let our parents get caught. It's totally like bizarre to me. Like it feels almost like brainwashing. Like I would never want my children to have the responsibility of keeping our family safe when it comes to that kind of thing. But what became really interesting was I had friendships on the road, people we saw on the weekends that were fellow booksellers that would go conference to conference with us. And then when we got back to Florida, my only friends were my cousins, my first cousins, my mother's brother's kids. And they could not have lived a more different life than us. They were in Florida full time. Dad's an airline pilot making crazy money. Mom's full time at home with them. They're Eagle Scouts, varsity soccer and football players. Like the most popular kids in school, them. Homeschooled, 6'4", 125-pound, 18-year-old version of me, bullied beyond comprehension. And I didn't even really register it as bullying. I just thought I was an outsider. A few years later, a few years ago, probably about 6 years ago, my younger cousin Christopher, who they're all pilots now also, he was flying Dale Earnhardt Jr. into a race just north of where we were hosting a class in Pennsylvania. So I flew up in my airplane, picked him up, spent the day with him, and he was there for our intro class. And our intro class is designed, and again, we're teaching the inner child. We're not teaching the adult. So it's designed to be very vulnerable, to be very purposeful about how much this flying thing has changed each instructor's life, and to give each student an opportunity to introduce why they're there. Because just learning to fly a butt fan is not enough reason to be there. There's a deeper call to adventure. Like, most of our students are engineers of one form or another. Computer engineers, practical engineers, mechanical engineers. These engineers see this. They're like, that's scientifically beautiful and adventurous as hell. And I need both those things in my life. And so I'm telling my story, and I kind of edited it a little bit because I didn't want it to come off harsh about my childhood because my cousin was in the room. And I'll never forget, we get back in the airplane. He goes, Eric, you really were bullied a lot. I remember how mean we were to you.
Oh, your cousins were actually doing a lot of the bullying.
Well, they were the cool kids.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be loved. And I never thought of them as the bullies. It was their friends. But it was really interesting reflection, particularly, I feel like I was given the gift of losing my memory. was given the gift of being able to rewrite who I was at 18 or just before my 18th birthday. And I think that if that hadn't happened, I would be a very different person than I am today.
Yeah.
Again, things can happen to you, for you, or by you. You
Yeah.
get to decide which.
Yeah. That's an interesting, especially that part about losing your memory really being a catalyst for being able to become somebody new and not be
100%.
held back by. Was the homeschooling religiously motivated or? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, mom and dad, I was 3 when they made the decision to start homeschooling because they didn't like the way the government was going and we were born at home, no social security numbers. I wish I'd learned that you didn't have to pay taxes if you didn't have one, but I got my own when I was 18. There was a lot of different elements, and many of them I'm sure I don't know the whole story, but there was a lot of fear, which might be why I'm so driven to not abolish, but to sit with fear and be present with fear and then overcome it.
Yeah.
For myself and for everyone else in my life.
You've alluded to this a little bit throughout our conversation today. Starting out in a very religious upbringing, what's your perspective on all of this now? Like, would you say you're religious, spiritual? Is God a word that you feel comfortable with, or?
My favorite way to describe God is actually stolen from John Vroman. It's God, Universe, Spirit, or Gus for short, which is weird because I'm pretty sure God's a woman. But Gus, the lady, my experience with religion is such that I find great value in spirituality and somewhat in religion as well. But I have a major, major issue in any man-made religion that is designed to sell fear. And my issue with most churches, most religions, is they're mostly constructs to create fear for the power of control. And I can give you the exact same argument for politics, for the news, for social media. It's the same argument. If you're selling fear that you have to follow a certain number of steps or certain things or certain ways in order to no longer be at risk, that to me is a position of control, not one of grace.
Yeah.
And fear and faith are antithesis of each other. So if you have fear, if we talk about that same coin, fear and faith are antithesis, faith and love are the same. So you have fear versus love. And if you look at all religions, they pretty much all come back to this idea that there is a perfect love that can counteract anything that is not love. But most religions build around fear, stating that in order to reach the love, you have to fear the evil or the force. There's a great book by, I think it's Richard Dawkins, Power versus Force, that I read for the first time when I was 19, just beginning to explore this, like, what am I? Because the more that I grow, the more that I learn, the more that I step into new situations. And mind you, I grew up speaking in tongues and like laying hands on people and seeing miracles and all these things. And then I was at my first secular concert at 21 years old, and I was in a room with 2,000 people, barely larger than this room.
Wow.
And it's Breaking Benjamin, and it's not a Christian band. And I felt the Holy Spirit walk into the room, and I said, wait a second, I felt this. I was singing with Mercy Me on stage. I know what this feeling is. How could they be here? God can't be in this room. And I realized maybe, just maybe, and again, this is not a judgment for anyone whose belief and truth is that there's the Holy Spirit and you're feeling God. Awesome. And maybe you're feeling humans aligned in the same energy. Because when you bring a group of humans together, you know where I felt the most powerful Holy Spirit? UT football games. UT football games, man, they're all chanting the same thing. They're all singing the same thing. They're all jumping up and down at the same times. They're all crying at the same times. Tell me that's not the Holy Spirit. It's the same energy I felt in church. And that made me question, well, do I need to be afraid of this energy? Or is it all God? Do we need to give God the glory and the responsibility for these humans coming together to love football? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I am constantly contemplative. I've been researching the Kabbalah and Judaism for the last year. I'm fascinated by each different sect. I love understanding, and I keep challenging myself to have more mentors who challenge me to think deeper.
Definitely. Let's see. This is a note that I made as I was listening to some of your episodes. What's time to a pig?
So I mentioned Chris Verhey, my very first mentor. Chris was the most frustrating mentor I've ever worked with in my life. also far above and beyond the man I still quote almost 30 years later. What's time to a pig? The story that he gave, mind you, I flew to Idaho. I'm supposed to meet with the governor of Idaho, and I missed my flight. I was 16. Maybe I was 15. I think I was 16. I was 16. And I missed my flight, so I missed the meeting with the governor. And this guy just acts bizarrely. Everywhere we go, he's like trying to give these weird like business lessons without ever finishing the lesson. Like we went to a pawn shop, we went to a drive-in movie theater, we went to a pick apart. Like we flew to California to go speak at a conference, and then drove 3 hours out of the way to go to a car pick apart place where they had like 25,000, 30,000 cars that you can go get your parts out of that were all crashed. And he's talking me through the model. Well, you're going to buy the car for $500. You're going to sell the parts. It's going to take you 15 years. And like never finishes his thought. And after 6 weeks, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, what is the point of all this? Everywhere we went, he parked in the no parking zone, like the red zones, like the towaway zones. Everywhere we went, and we never got towed. I'm like, what? Like, is this guy magic? Like, what's the point of all of this? And as we're driving to the airport, 6 weeks in, he starts telling me, Eric, do you know what I've been trying to teach you this whole time? And I was like, no. I genuinely, like, I'm mad at this point. Like, I have like righteous indignation. Like, I've just wasted 6 weeks of my life.
Uh-huh.
And he says, there was a pig farmer who, for years, he'd always walk his pigs to market. And all of his competitors should be driving their pigs to market, and they'd always make fun of him as he's walking, 4 days to market. And he'd always have the same response. Well, what's time to a pig? And that's how he left it. And I was like, wait, what? And he says, you don't get it? No. Mind you, at this point, I am doped up on NyQuil and Dayquil because I was sick as a dog, too. It's like, this is the extra layer. And he goes, well, all the places we've been sell 10-foot by 10-foot lots. The outdoor movie theater charges $10 for 2 hours. The pick apart makes $500 over 10 years. The storage units make $200 per month. If we ever got impounded, you'd make $1,000 a night, all in the same amount of space. So what's time to a pig is to say, why do you value something differently than other people? Whereas other people felt like their time was more valuable. They had to drive the truck, but they made less profit because they had to maintain the truck. They had to pay for fuel. They did all these things. So this farmer who was willing to take the walk made more money and was satisfied because he knew what the time was worth. Still doesn't make a complete 100% sense of the way he was going with this, but it stuck with me. Like, what's time to a pig? He had other ones, because remember, this is the options investor, and he had this guy in Houston who sold oil tankers. He only had to sell one oil tanker every couple of years. Yeah. Right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. He gets his commission. He's set. So he'd call me and say, Eric, oil tanker, check out this ticker. And I just put all my money into it because he told me this story about oil tankers. And now my brain goes, oh, that's an oil tanker. Of course, it's worth the investment. He's done the backstop, done the research, and that all worked out great for me until I was long on the pound yen and Bear Stearns collapsed. And I watched all my money disappear in 21 minutes, 23 minutes.
Dang, dude.
Mind you, I started with very little money, and I was Forex trading, which is crazy risky, and it was 8 figures in 20 minutes. It was pretty wild. I was 23, I think, when that happened, 22.
Dang.
A few lives, I guess.
One thing that came up for me as you're relaying the story from your mentor is there seems to be something magical about not being overt with the message, hiding it. And what made me think of it is I just started rereading Think and Grow Rich. I read it when I was 19, tried again at some other point. Tried to read it like 2 years ago, and I was sort of turned off by how much it was referencing God. And I was going through a phase where I was kind of very like, I'm now even able to say that word out loud without getting so aggravated. Anyways.
Gus is a great word, just saying.
Yeah, sure.
She loves that one.
So in reading it, I think this is maybe a few weeks ago, I missed the part where he's like, the message is never directly said, but you'll find it kind of threaded through all of these stories. And that really made me want to keep going. And I'm curious if, your mentor Chris was trying to do the same thing by not directly telling you until the very end and getting you all riled up over it. What do you think about that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He either thought I was more clever than I am, or he thought he was more clever than he is. and either one could be true, and this is 20 plus years ago, so it really doesn't matter what the truth is. What's interesting is that the lessons stuck.
Yeah.
And there certainly have been plenty of mentors that I've learned from that the lessons haven't stuck, or that I found deeper and deeper into the truth of who they were beneath the facade. I found that they were not men I could respect.
Oh, wow.
Shockingly common.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you hoped we would talk about today that didn't come up?
Based upon your last podcast, the female orgasm. I'm kidding.
You really hoped that would come up?
For those of you guys who don't consistently listen to this podcast, please check out his previous episode. It's all about the female orgasm. 2 hours and 45 minutes, 41 minutes of I actually haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to. I promise. Don't worry, Nell. I got that. My wife's Nell, by the way. No, nothing comes to mind. My heart has always been the same. It's like, if I can share my story and to touch one person, awesome. And even if that person's just you. Sure. I have so appreciated getting to know who you are.
Same.
And it's something that I really hope that more people get the opportunity, because you have a lot to give.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, man.
All right, I got one last question for you then. If you could push a button and everybody on earth tomorrow wakes up with a new belief in their mind, not just like new information, like, oh, God is in fact real or whatever, but like some new belief, what would it be? And of course, why?
Can I answer it my own way?
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I are part of Front Row Dads, which is about 300 men who do the work. They show up for their families. They show up for their bodies. They show up for their mental capabilities. They show up for their businesses. They prioritize what is most important. Their calendars reflect that they're family men first. And to some degree, they all have some exposure to somatic work, trauma healing, these types of things. My dream, if I go really big dream, I want 100 million men and women around the world who do the work, who have shared language. I have no desire to lead a cult, but I would like for there to be a place, there to be a shared set of values. You know, my current dream would be like 50 to 100,000 people, but my real big dream, like the whole world thing, it's people who can have a conversation about the hard things, get deeply vulnerable, and have done the work to be present with all that is instead of having to push it down and hide it.
Yeah.
So if I could change one thing about everyone in the world tomorrow, it would be to inspire them through my own suffering, hardship, pain, and truth to look at themselves and to really choose growth, to really choose presence. Because if we could end the dopamine addiction by teaching people how to be really in the room, really engaged, really truly there, we could change the whole world.
Yeah.
So
it's that simple.
Presence is everything. And if I could have everyone learn how to be present, which means facing their hardships, facing the stuff they don't want to face, then what a different world it would make. What a different world for our children. If you look at, I have 3 kids, you have 2. They're incredible little humans. And especially our oldest, they're getting this place where like, they're not just little kids, they're like adult humans almost. Yeah. And I look at them and I'm like, if I can give them one gift, that gift is teaching them to be present, teaching them to actually feel what needs to be felt instead of pushing it down and running away. Mm-hmm. That's my mission.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. I had such a great time hanging out with you. I always do.
Likewise, man. And I'm just really disappointed that I didn't have as much to talk about as the woman who did about orgasms. So I feel like I failed you.
Well, let's make sure that people want to learn more about you.
Yeah.
What's the best way to do it?
Well, the new book will hopefully be out soon. It's called The Royal Shift. It's about how you step into a higher version of yourself, the archetype of king or queen, the version of you that doesn't need anything from anyone, who's not afraid, who is truly doing the work and seeing the results, both financially, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally. It takes my own story and the stories of my clients and really helps put them into frameworks of ways that you can show up differently for your own life. So that'll be on Amazon and anywhere else you buy books. You can also find me at ericfarewell.com. That's EricFarewell.com. All the social medias, and anyone who's listening to this podcast, just send me a message. Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever. I'm always happy to spend some time chatting with you until my calendar gets too full and I send you to one of my other coaches. But yeah, please. Anyone who's following Danny is probably someone I'm going to get along with. So reach out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
That wraps up another episode. As always, thank you for listening. You can learn more about the podcast, myself, and the mission at the website, which is mindstatepodcast.com. I'm also on Instagram at the Mindstate Podcast. The Facebook page can be found at facebook.com/mindstatepodcast. Thank you so much.